They tell you that you're too much, too intense, too emotional, too caring. But here's what I've noticed. They never say this when their world is crashing down and they need your shoulder to cry on. Funny how that works, right? When they're falling apart, your calmness is their lifeline. When their mind is racing with anxiety, your presence is their sanctuary. When they need someone to listen at 2 a.m., your phone is the first one they dial. But the moment you need that same support back, suddenly, you're asking for too much. You're asking. So what do? You start making yourself smaller. You begin questioning everything about yourself. Maybe I really am too emotional. Maybe my expectations are unrealistic. Maybe the problem has always been me. But let me tell you something. Deep in your gut, you know that's not true. You're not clingy. You're just someone who knows how to commit. You're not needy. You're simply present in your relationships. You don't crave attention for attention's sake. What you're looking for is genuine connection. So here's the million-dollar question. Why does loving deeply always leave you feeling completely drained? Here's the uncomfortable truth. In a world that's obsessed with keeping things light and superficial, your depth makes people uncomfortable. They're drawn to your light like moths to a flame. But the moment they see the shadows that created that light, they back away. And then that painful thought creeps in. Maybe I'm just too difficult to love. But what if I told you that you're not the one who's broken? What if, just like Carl Jung discovered in his groundbreaking work, your energy isn't the problem at all. It's actually a mirror that reflects what others are desperately trying to avoid. Think about it. You show them their fears, their shame, the emptiness they've been running from, and instead of looking at what you're reflecting, they do something else entirely. They take from you. They drain your energy, your time, your emotional resources until you're running on empty. In this video, we're going to uncover the hidden truth about what I call emotional parasites. We'll explore why your particular type of energy attracts people who only know how to take. And most importantly, how Jung's revolutionary insights can help you protect your light without having to dim it for anyone. If you've ever walked into a room you helped brighten, only to feel completely invisible, make sure to hit that subscribe button. This channel sees through the masks people wear, and this video might finally explain why you've been feeling so deeply misunderstood. Carl Jung wasn't just another psychologist studying the mechanics of the mind. He was fascinated by the invisible forces that shape our lives, those things you can feel in your bones, but can't quite put into words. You know what I'm talking about. The way someone can walk into a room and instantly change the entire atmosphere. The way silence can communicate more than 1,000 words ever could. The way energy, not logic, often determines who we connect with and who we avoid. Jung had a name for this invisible force. He called it psychic energy. Now, before you think we're getting into crystal healing territory, let me clarify. He wasn't talking about anything mystical or supernatural. He was talking about the very real psychological force that drives everything you do. Your attention, your emotions, your gut instincts. They're all powered by this energy. Think about it this way. Every time you speak, you're spending energy. Every emotion you share, every moment you spend truly listening to someone without checking your phone or planning what to say next, you're investing your psychic energy. And here's where it gets dangerous. Most people have no idea how much they're giving away. But others, they see it clear as day. They don't see your soul or your dreams or your potential. They see your energy like a resource to be harvested. They feel the calmness you bring to chaos, and they want to bottle it up for themselves. They notice your natural kindness and immediately start calculating how they can benefit from it. Jung understood something crucial. This energy isn't infinite. You don't have an endless supply. It's sacred, it's limited, and it's incredibly precious. And when you pour it into people who only know how to take, something terrible happens. You begin to hollow out from the inside, not dramatically or suddenly. It happens so slowly, you might not even notice, until one day you wake up and realize you can't remember the last time you felt truly full. Here's how the pattern usually starts. They shower you with praise for being so understanding. They lean on you whenever life gets heavy. They call you their rock, their safe space, their voice of reason. And then, the moment they're back on their feet, they disappear. No explanation. No thank you. No checking in to see how you're doing. Just silence. As if your entire value evaporated the second they stopped needing you. Let me be clear. This isn't love. This isn't friendship. This isn't any kind of real connection. This is consumption. Plain and simple. This video is going to take you deep into Jung's understanding of psychic energy. We'll explore why certain people seem literally addicted to your presence, how these emotional vampires disguise themselves as lovers and friends, and most importantly, how you can reclaim your energy before it completely breaks you. Because here's the hard truth. These people don't actually love you. They love the way you heal them, the way you make their problems disappear, the way you help them avoid facing their own inner work. And if you don't learn how to protect your energy, you'll spend your entire life fixing others while you slowly fall apart in silence. Some people have a very specific calling pattern. They only reach out when their world is on fire. They need to vent about their horrible boss, their toxic ex, their family drama. They'll talk for hours, dumping every emotional burden they're carrying straight into your lap. And then, once they feel better, radio silence. No, how are you doing? No, thanks for listening. Nothing until the next crisis hits. Carl Jung didn't use the term energy vampires, but he understood this dynamic better than anyone. He called it psychic projection, the unconscious act of taking your internal chaos and casting it onto someone else, essentially expecting others to carry the weight of what you refuse to face in yourself. Here's how Jung explained it. Every single person has a shadow side. It's this hidden compartment where we stuff all the emotions we don't want to deal with, our fears, our shame, our unmet needs, our rage. Most people would rather do anything than open that compartment and sort through what's inside. So what do they do instead? They outsource it. They project all that unprocessed darkness onto other people. And guess who they gravitate toward? The empaths, the deep feelers, the ones who actually listen when someone talks, the people who can sense emotions before they're even spoken. In other words, you. They seek you out because you feel safe. But here's the thing. They don't treat you like a person. They treat you like an emotional garbage disposal. And over time, even if the signs are subtle, the impact is very real. After spending time with them, you feel inexplicably exhausted. You find yourself lying in bed at night, worrying about their problems as if they were your own. You feel this creeping sense of guilt whenever you even think about setting a boundary. This isn't friendship. This is emotional leeching at its finest. But it never starts this way. Does it? In the beginning, they put you on a pedestal. They tell you how wise you are, how you're such an incredible listener, how they've never met anyone who understands them like you do. They open up fast, sometimes trauma dumping within the first few conversations. They make you feel special, needed, important. But watch what happens next. The dynamic slowly but surely shifts. They stop asking about your life. When you try to share something you're going through, they either change the subject or somehow make it about them. They make you feel selfish for needing space. And here's the real kicker. The moment you try to pull back even slightly, they hit you with the guilt trips. I thought you cared about me. You've changed. I guess I can't count on you anymore. According to Jung, this is textbook shadow projection. These people aren't in love with you as a person. They're in love with how regulated you make them feel, how seen, how understood, how whole. But here's the problem. It's not sustainable. Why? Because they're not actually healing. They're not doing any inner work. They're just borrowing your light because they refuse to kindle their own. And when you finally hit your limit and stop giving, that's when their true colors show. Suddenly you're the bad guy. You're cold, selfish, different than you used to be. They'll probably say something like, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Then they'll move on to find someone else to drain, and the cycle starts all over again. What's happening here isn't always intentionally malicious. Most of the time, it's completely unconscious. But that doesn't make it any less dangerous, because it leaves people like you emotionally bankrupt, constantly questioning your own worth, wondering if maybe you really are asking for too much. Jung believed that authentic connection requires two people who have done the work of meeting their own shadow, two people who have looked at their own darkness and chosen to integrate it rather than project it. But energy vampires, they avoid that journey like the plague. Instead, they surround themselves with mirrors, people who reflect their light back to them so they never have to venture into their own darkness. Here's the truth: you're not too intense. You're just vibrating at a frequency they haven't reached yet. And rather than rise to meet you, they try to drain you down to their level. But once you see this pattern clearly, everything changes. You can stop confusing emotional labor with love. You can stop trying to heal people who have no interest in healing themselves. You can finally say no without that crushing weight of guilt. You can protect your energy without apology, because your light isn't free. And it's definitely not your job to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. Let me ask you something. Do you keep attracting the same type of person over and over? The ones who take more than they give? The ones who drain you dry, disappear without explanation, then pop back up like nothing happened, but only when they need something? Maybe you've been asking yourself, why do I keep ending up in these lopsided relationships? You're empathetic, emotionally intelligent, genuinely caring. You listen more than you speak. You try to be understanding even when it costs you. But somehow, you keep attracting users, takers, emotional parasites who see you as a resource rather than a person. Carl Jung once said something that changed how I see these patterns. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This isn't fate. This isn't bad luck. This is a pattern, and it's been running in the background of your life for years, maybe even decades. Let's rewind to your childhood for a moment. When you were young, your value was probably tied to what you did, rather than who you were. Maybe you had a parent who was emotionally unavailable, dealing with their own struggles. So you became hyper-vigilant about everyone's moods. You learned to read the room before you even learned to read books. You figured out how to manage other people's chaos, how to shrink yourself to avoid conflict, how to be the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who holds it all together. You gave love hoping it would be returned. You listened endlessly, hoping someone would eventually ask how you were feeling. You poured out energy like water, hoping that one day someone would pour it back, but they never did. And here's what happened over time. Your nervous system started to confuse overgiving with safety. To be loved, you had to earn it through service. To be seen, you had to first make yourself invisible. To belong, you had to sacrifice your own needs. This is how unconscious patterns take root. And now, even though you're an adult, even though you know better intellectually, those early imprints are still running the show. You're magnetically drawn to people who need you. You overlook or feel uncomfortable around people who simply see you. Being needed feels familiar, even when it's exhausting. Being seen for who you are, that feels foreign, maybe even scary. But here's the trap you need to understand when you keep giving from a place of lack. You attract people who feed on that emptiness, not because you're weak or broken, but because you've never been taught that real love doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself. It doesn't require you to earn it through exhaustion. Jung understood that what we repress, what we deny in ourselves, ends up controlling us from the shadows. If you were taught to repress your needs, your voice, your healthy anger, you will unconsciously attract people who exploit that silence. You become the healer who never gets healed, the lover who gives but doesn't receive, the friend who's always there but never held. And worst of all, you blame yourself for it. But listen to me. You are not broken. You're not too much or too difficult or too anything. You're just stuck in a loop that your inner child mistakes for love. And it's not love, not even close. Real love doesn't drain you. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't vanish the moment you ask for something in return. Real love is an exchange, not an extraction. So how do you break free from this pattern? You start by making the unconscious conscious, just like Jung suggested. You start noticing, who am I drawn to and why? What do I tolerate that actually drains me? When did I first learn that love had to be earned through self-sacrifice? And then, and this is the crucial part, you choose differently. You stop trying to prove your worth through overgiving. You start learning to receive without guilt. You set boundaries not as walls to keep people out, but as sacred filters that only allow in those who can match your depth. Because here's what you need to understand. You don't have to bleed to be seen. You don't have to shrink to be safe. You don't have to give everything you have to be worthy of love. You just have to stop attracting from a place of lack and start embodying the love you never received as a child. When that shift happens, everything changes. The users fall away because they can sense you're no longer an easy target. And in their place, people who can actually see you start to appear. People who match your energy rather than drain it. People who pour in as much as they take out. You've probably lived this exact scenario. You're there for everyone, consistently, reliably, without being asked. You check in on people. You remember the small details of their lives. You show up for their crises, their celebrations, their mundane Tuesday afternoon meltdowns. You hold space for their pain, calm their anxiety, lift them when they're drowning. And yet, despite all of this, No one really sees you. Not your fears that keep you up at night. Not the pain you carry silently. Not the essence of who you are beneath all the giving. They love what you do for them. Not who you are. They love your function, not your soul. Carl Jung had a perfect word for this performance. Persona. It's the social mask we wear to be accepted, to belong, to feel safe in a world that often feels anything but safe. We all have one. It's that role we step into when we feel we have to earn our place in the world. The helper, the rock, the reliable one, the one who never needs anything. It's the version of ourselves we present when we believe that who we really are isn't quite enough, even if it means burying the parts of us that most need to be witnessed. Here's the problem: the longer you wear that mask, the more invisible your real self becomes, even to you. You get praised for your kindness, but no one notices when you're quietly falling apart. You're loved for your calm energy, but no one thinks to ask about the storm raging inside you. You're appreciated for your strength, but your bone-deep exhaustion goes completely unnoticed. This erodes you in ways that are hard to describe. You start feeling like a tool, useful, but not cherished. Valuable for what you provide, but not valued for who you are. People remember you exist when they need something. But when you're the one in need, crickets. It's a particular kind of loneliness that cuts deep into your soul. The kind you can't explain to anyone because, from the outside, your life looks full. You smile, you show up, you say, "I'm fine," with such practiced ease that even you almost believe it. But underneath, you're screaming to be seen, not for what you do, but for who you are when you're not doing anything at all. And here's the really twisted part: most people don't even realize they're doing this to you. They're so used to you being the strong one, they genuinely don't think to ask if you're struggling. They're so comforted by your presence, they forget that you also need comfort. It's not necessarily that they don't care. It's that your persona, the one Jung warned us about, has done its job too perfectly. You've convinced the world that you're fine. You've hidden the parts of you that bleed. You've smiled through your darkest moments because somewhere along the way, that's what you learned you had to do to survive. But survival isn't the same as living fully. Jung warned that the more we identify with our persona, the more disconnected we become from our true self, our authentic identity. And that disconnection, it leaves you feeling hollow, unseen, and quietly resentful. Because it's exhausting to be loved for a mask you built just to feel safe in the world. So the questions start haunting you. Do they actually love me, or just what I do for them? If I stopped giving, would anyone stick around? What happens if I drop this mask and show them who I really am? These questions are terrifying, but they're also the beginning of freedom, because the moment you start asking them, you open a door that Jung believed every person must walk through, the journey from persona to authenticity. You start showing up differently, less polished, more real, less yes and more, "let me think about it." You stop performing for love and start seeing who shows up when there's no show to watch. And yes, the dynamic shifts. Some people pull away because they were only ever interested in what you could do for them. Others get uncomfortable because your honesty forces them to look at their own masks. But a few, and these people are rare but real, will see you. Not for your light, not for your usefulness, not for your endless capacity to give. They'll see you for your being. These people will never make you feel invisible, because they're not looking for a function. They're looking for a person. So if you've been feeling unseen, like your soul is buried under layers of trying to be enough for everyone else, it's not because you're broken. It's because your light was trained to shine only in ways that made others comfortable. But it's time to take off the mask. Time to risk being real. Time to remember that the people who truly love you won't need you to perform. They'll see you, choose you, and celebrate you exactly as you are. At first, it feels almost inconsequential. You say no just once. You don't immediately answer that text. You don't drop everything to help. You finally protect your time, your energy, your peace of mind. And then, silence. The people who used to message you daily, gone. The ones who desperately needed you for every crisis. They vanish like morning mist. No confrontation, no closure. Just a gaping absence where their presence used to be. It's disorienting. You replay that moment when you said, "I can't right now," searching for what you did wrong. But here's the truth. You didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped sacrificing yourself. And that simple act, it made their mask slip right off. Because some people weren't there for you. They were there for your service, your availability, your emotional labor, your light. Carl Jung understood this dynamic deeply. He believed that individuation, the process of becoming your true, whole self, requires pulling back your energy from all the places it's been unconsciously leaking out. It means no longer playing roles just to be accepted, no longer pouring yourself into others to earn your place, no longer letting your kindness be weaponized against you. And when you do this, when you reclaim your soul from everyone who's been feeding on it, the illusion shatters. The transaction is no longer worth it for them. They can't guilt-trip you into compliance. They can't access your energy on demand. They can't lean on your empathy while offering nothing in return. And that's when the truth becomes crystal clear. Their presence in your life was dependent on your self-abandonment. They didn't stay because they loved you. They stayed because you gave endlessly, quietly, without resistance. The moment you grow, the moment you begin what Jung called individuation, they withdraw. Not because you became toxic or difficult, but because your boundaries exposed their true intentions. This realization hurts in a mature, quiet way. It's not the sharp pain of betrayal, but the dull ache of clarity. You see the truth without anger, just understanding. Love never demands your exhaustion. Real connection doesn't dissolve when you honor yourself. Yes, it's lonely at first. You miss them. Or rather, you miss the illusion of them. You miss the version of yourself that always knew how to keep everyone happy. But you also feel something new growing in that space. Peace. A strange, unfamiliar peace that comes from knowing you're no longer performing. No longer bleeding to feel worthy. No longer contorting yourself to fit into spaces that only valued your function. This is individuation. Jung said it's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's reclaiming all the parts of yourself you gave away to survive. It's the path back to your essence. And yes, that path often requires solitude. Because when you stop overgiving, you stop attracting users. In that stillness, in that sacred silence, something beautiful happens. You finally hear yourself again. You reconnect with the voice beneath all the noise, the voice that whispers, "You are not here to be drained. You are not here to be someone else's emotional life support. You are not here to be scaffolding for people unwilling to build themselves. You are here to live fully, freely, authentically. Those who disappear when you stop giving, let them go with gratitude. They taught you the difference between being used and being loved. The ones who stay, who meet you at your depth, who celebrate your boundaries as much as your kindness, those are your people. They don't just love your light. They love your wholeness. The pattern is so subtle, you might not even notice it. It starts with a simple yes when your body is screaming for rest. Yes when you're overwhelmed. Yes when you have nothing left to give. Because saying no feels like betrayal. Not of them, but of the identity you've built. The reliable one. The strong one. The one who's always there no matter what. But this constant availability, this open-door policy for anyone who needs you, becomes a slow erosion of who you really are. You begin to disappear beneath your own kindness. Carl Jung warned us about this exact trap. He believed that when we constantly suppress our real needs, boundaries, and desires, we create what he called a fracture in the soul through repression. And repression doesn't stay quiet forever. You repress your exhaustion to be helpful. You repress your anger to stay likable. You repress your truth to avoid disappointing anyone. And slowly, without realizing it, you become emotionally bankrupt. Every yes that betrays your truth withdraws from your emotional account. Every fake smile, every forced conversation, every act of caretaking done from guilt instead of love, it all adds up. Until one day you wake up feeling nothing. No joy, no spark, just a spreading numbness. This is the real cost of being too available. You don't just lose energy, you lose yourself. You lose the ability to hear your own voice beneath everyone else's needs. You forget what you want, because you've spent years prioritizing what others expect. You feel invisible not because others don't see you, but because you no longer see yourself. Jung saw this as dangerous self-abandonment, becoming everything for everyone and nothing for yourself. When we repress who we are to belong, we create a false self, a mask that says, I'm fine, I don't mind, I'm happy to help. But behind it, there's grief, there's rage, there's a desperate longing to be loved without conditions. Here's the hard truth: constantly being available doesn't make you lovable, it makes you useful. And there's a profound difference. People grow to expect your sacrifice. They stop thanking you. They start treating you like a utility, not a human being. The more you give without boundaries, the more they forget you even have boundaries. So you stretch, you break, you pour from an empty cup until you're running on fumes, and no one notices because you trained them not to. But here's what Jung would want you to understand. You are not here to be available for everyone. You are not here to be the fixer, the healer, the emotional sponge for everyone else's chaos. You are here to live fully. And that means honoring your limits. It means disappointing people. It means being misunderstood. It means saying no even when your voice shakes. Because every no that honors your soul is a yes to your healing. Repression may feel like safety, but it's actually self-erasure. And the only way to reclaim yourself is to stop equating your worth with your availability. You are not valuable because you're always accessible. You are valuable because you exist. And when you finally pull back, when you let yourself be unavailable, you'll discover something miraculous. The real you isn't selfish. The real you isn't cold. The real you is free. There comes a moment after the exhaustion, the heartbreak, the hollowing out, when something inside you shifts, not dramatically, but quietly, revolutionary. A moment where you say, no more. No more being the emotional dumping ground for everyone else's problems. No more dimming your light to keep others comfortable. No more mistaking self-erasure for kindness. Carl Jung believed this moment, this quiet rebellion, is the beginning of true individuation, becoming whole. But wholeness isn't about becoming nice again. It's about becoming real. And that starts with rebuilding what he called your psychic boundaries, the invisible walls that protect your energy, your peace, your very self. Jung gave us 3 powerful tools for this transformation. First, shadow work. For most of your life, you've repressed parts of yourself, your anger, your assertiveness, your ability to say no without guilt. You were taught these parts were bad, that you had to be agreeable and selfless or risk rejection. But Jung knew that what we repress doesn't disappear. It becomes our shadow, holding our strength, our voice, our raw truth. Shadow work means turning inward and reclaiming what you've disowned. It's admitting, I am allowed to take up space. My needs matter. Anger isn't evil, it's information. As you integrate your shadow, you stop being a sponge and become a mirror. People can no longer manipulate a mirror because it reflects truth, not compliance. Second, integration. Healing doesn't mean becoming someone new. It means remembering who you were before the world taught you to perform. Jung's concept of integration is about aligning your soul with your choices. You stop shape-shifting for approval. You live from your center, not your wounds. You don't just set boundaries. You become one. Your presence communicates, I don't abandon myself anymore. Third, solitude. Most people fear being alone. But solitude isn't loneliness, it's self-communion. In solitude, you hear your own voice again. You rediscover your desires. You realize your worth was never tied to being needed. Jung called solitude a school of the soul, where clarity is born, energy returns, and your spirit sharpens its edges for truth, not battle. Pain becomes power when you own the lesson. All the betrayal, the ghosting, the draining relationships, they weren't your fault, but they were your curriculum. Each person who took without giving taught you about your own capacity and neglect. Now you choose differently. You don't lash out, you level up. You don't explain, you embody. You don't chase. You create gravity because you're no longer the doormat. You're the doorway to a higher standard. Here's the irony. The moment you stop begging for love is when love finds you, not the draining kind, but the kind that recognizes you for who you are, not what you give. Jung believed that wholeness attracts wholeness. When you reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away, your energy changes. Before, you radiated availability. Now, you radiate self-possession. This repels users but attracts respect. Real love only arrives when false attachments die. When you stop performing and stand in your integrated self, someone sees you and doesn't flinch, not because they need healing, but because they're healing too. You were never too intense, too emotional, too deep. You were never too much. They were just too empty to hold you. Your energy wasn't a flaw, it was a gift. But that doesn't mean you deserve to be used. Carl Jung taught us that true power comes from within, not from giving yourself away, but from reclaiming yourself. If you've felt invisible or discarded, this is your sign to stop giving your soul away piece by piece. Withdraw your light from those who only take, and save it for those who can meet you in the dark. The right people won't just need your energy, they'll honor it. If this resonated with you, take a breath and take your power back. And if you're ready to go deeper, subscribe to Siphos, where your mind isn't judged but understood. Your energy is sacred. Protect it. It's time.